Hello everyone, this is GM Josh Friedel for chess.com, and today I'm going to be going over how to win queen against rook. So this is going to be a series of videos, but I'm going to start with the most basic and work up to the more advanced positions. So first of all, queen against rook has known to be a win for a very long time, but the defense has actually really improved because of computers, and computers really know how to defend things very well. It even come up with some new defenses, so we're going to eventually kind of explore those, but for now, we're actually going to go for the basics, because when you're looking at endgames, you want to start with the most basic and work yourself up. So obviously for beginners, they have to learn how to mate with king and queen, king and rook, and then they get to slightly more advanced positions. So for example, in these positions, mostly what we're going to be doing is analyze it until white wins black's rook, and obviously analyzing to mate is not necessary, although you can certainly play to mate if you'd like, if you have a board next to you. So first I'm going to start with this position, which is known as the Philidor position. And this position is probably the most common one in queen against rook. It is a very common way to win, and I'd say even a majority of queen against rook endgames result in this position. So first off, in this position, I'd like to give you a couple examples of what not to do as white. One common thing that people do wrong, especially amateur players, is a move like this, for example. The reason why this isn't very good is because the king and queen look very strong like this, but they're actually very poorly coordinated, because pretend that the rook is not here in this position. It's actually stalemate, which gives black lots of tricks. For example, after check, if white plays here, it's immediately a draw with this little trick. Rook check. If king takes, it's stalemate, and already the win is blown. So in this position, if white tries to go back this way, black just keeps checking. Obviously, it can't go to the A file because the rook will pin the queen, and which means the king has to go here, and black, believe it or not, can chase the king yet again with this check. And note how it can't take it because it would be stalemate. So the king has to go all the way here, and now black can play a move like rook b7 or rook a7, and all of a sudden the win has become that much harder. The king has been forced away, the black king might get out, and as you can see, this is not what you want to be doing. So avoid moves like that. The king and queen almost never ever belong like this. So try to remember that it functions better when the queen's a slight distance away. So this position is actually perfect. The idea being that the queen covers the squares, the king can be checked, and it also controls where the king can move, and it also can get to the center very easily with a check like this, which is often how you're going to win. So the queen is basically perfect here, and so is white's king, really. The king can't really get any better than this. So again, I mean, there are lots of ways you can mess this position up. Queen a6 is one. Obviously, you don't want to play a move like this, allowing skewers, so you always want to make sure you keep black's checks in mind. And keep in mind, when the king's close to the corner, that means two things. Number one, you're going to be making progress, but number two, you're also going to have to watch out for stalemate. So every rook move you want to keep in mind, because there are always stalemate tricks available. What you really want to do is make sure that the queen and king get to this exact position, especially against the rook and king like this. So the idea is that if it's black to move here, black has basically no good moves. One of black's key defensive ideas in the king and rook against king and queen is that the king and rook like to stay together so that white can't win the rook very easily. But here it's actually impossible. But that's assuming that it's black to move. If it's white to move, then white has to make it black to move here in order to win. So first let me show you how to do that. Okay, so you have to basically get this position. So the way you do it is a little trick. First you check with the queen in the center. So the king can't just go to c8, of course, because of queen e8 mate. And king a7 and king a8 are basically the same. And now you have a choice. I'm going to check here because, you know, it's in front of you. It's easier to see. But the idea is that if the rook tries to block, the queen slides across the board to checkmate. And this is a very, very common pattern, by the way, that the queen is an amazing long-range piece. So you'll see that oftentimes it's flying completely across the board in order to interfere with the king and rook, while the king and rook are trying to keep bunched together. So the king has to move here in order to avoid bait, and now, of course, you slide back here. And we have the same position. Note how the king is on c6 and the queen is on a5. If the king is on a6 with the queen on c5, I've seen a lot of people confuse this. then it's not that easy a win at all because black has rook d7 as a defense. But here there's a problem. So let's say that black tries to keep his king and rook together. If king c8, you have a lot of ways to win here. But again, when you're going for this, you don't always have to do the quickest until mate. You can just like win the rook as quickly as you can and get to a position you just know is winning. So queen a6, of course, is the easiest way to do that, and then simply take the rook. So that's not really challenging. Rook a7 is the other attempt to keep the king and rook together. But here white has a fairly strong move, which is queen d8 mate. So black basically has to choose a square for the rook to move to. And basically black has all these options as far as where to move the rook. So what I'd like you to do now is pause your video and see if you can figure out a sequence of checks that white can use to win the rook or checkmate against all of these moves. Now, it'll take you a while, but the idea is that you get used to how the king and queen work together, how you use them to check. Now, I'll give you a clue. Because rooks move basically like rooks, a queen can't check a rook, on a rank or file and expect to win it, obviously. For example, if the rook goes here, you can't check like this to win it because the rook and queen are interacting. So the way you're going to win a rook in almost every situation is you're going to have to cross-check it. As in, for example, if the rook moves here, which is certainly not one of the better tries, the queen checks, and this double attack is enough to win. So that also leaves this move out, of course, because of the same move. So these tries are certainly black's best. But as you'll see, there's always a sequence of checks that will win. And keep in mind that when you're looking at this, like say you have this over the board, if you know this position's a win, which after this video, of course, you will, you should try to do it with all checks. Because if you try to do it in some kind of fancy way without checking, it's very easy to miss something. And I can tell you that a lot of wins are blown because white tries to do something a little bit tricky. So at this point, you should be winning with all checks. So first of all, if rook f7, now there are a few ways to do it here. For example, queen b4 check is one way to win. But after king c8, there's a problem, which is that the rook covers the square for the queen to check. If the queen were to check here, it would actually be a mistake, because now the king gets out, and now all of a sudden it's very, very tricky and messy. But it turns out that white could actually win by playing this. If this is your solution, I mean, congratulations, this was actually very, very clever, but this is not how I'd recommend doing it in a game, simply because you can mess up something like this. If you think that you see some win by some tricky move, you have to make sure that there's no stalemate tricks, there's no monkey business, anything like this. So that's not exactly how I'd do it. If it were me, I would probably check here. So the idea now is that there's this check always threatened. So the king can't just stay on the 8th, which of course it would really like to. So the king would move up, and now you have this check. And this basically finishes it, because the king is checked like this. If it goes to the back rank, it gets checked by the queen, and then you take the rook. And if it moves up here, you have a choice between these two wonderful mates. So that's not too difficult. And again, it's a much better, I think, than trying to do it in some sandwich. So after this move, so rook b3 is another try, which of course is very similar. So here, it's harder to check exactly what you did in the other variation. But here, the easiest way to do it is with this check. So again, the king can almost never just go here because there's always some kind of mate. Whether it's this or this, in this case both of them work. So the king has to go to the other way. So king a7 and king a8 are basically the same. But so let's show king a8. So the idea is you play queen check here, queen check here, and now black has the usual problem. If the king goes here, then again, nice long-range check with the mate on the side there. So the king has to go up somewhere, here or b8, and then you check. So you have the cross check, once again, attacking the king and the rook at the same time. And if the rook tries to block, you have the same mate as always, which is queen a2 mate. And this is just very, very simple. So again, once you get the hang of it and you learn how the queen checks and how the typical maneuvers, finding these wins in these positions is very easy. because there are lots of similar positions to this, which are also winning in a more or less similar fashion. So the idea is you want to be able to find all these checks on your own and figure out how they work. But basically, the queen maneuvers to where it can attack both the king and rook at the same time. So let's move on to this one. So again, the rook farthest from the king. This is what most people will play in this position, just so you know, statistically. Or this. It really, I'd say both of these moves are most likely. And they lose in similar ways. So you have a choice here. This one, for example, king a7, queen d4. So now you're going to do the same check here. So you're going to do this one. But here, now here you have to be a little bit cautious though. For example, if you play here, yes, you can still win after this. But note how you don't have this check. So I'd say that this is not the best way to do it. The best way is to throw in this check first, so that the king can't go here because of the mate. So it has to go to the a file, and then you check here. So once again, the rook blocks, runs into the mate across the board there with the queen. So the king has to go here, and then you snag the rook this way. And that's about it. And so if the rook goes to the other square, it's actually very similar. The idea is that you play queen e5 check, king here. So again, I would not recommend this move because king a6, and you have the same problem. Again, not that this position is not winning, but you want to be able to win with all checks in a very simple manner once you reach the Philidor position. So checks, I would check here first, so that there's no king a6 due to this mate. Here, check. Again, if the rook blocks, you have the queen a1 mate, and here. And of course, once you win the rook, the mate is only in a couple moves. Something like this. And that's that. So again, Philidor position, this position is one of the key positions in king and queen against king and rook. If you reach this, if you're playing the offense, if you're playing the king and queen, then reaching this should be one of your primary goals. If you reach this, you know you're winning, no matter whose move it is, because if it's white's move, you can make it black's move. And once you get here, now you know it's winning, and not only do you know that, but you know exactly how to do it. And believe me, this is almost half the battle in trying to win these positions, because in all likelihood, you're going to get to this or something almost exactly like it. So knowing how to do this is very important. And of course, if you're black, you should actually try to avoid this, because this is probably the most well-known position. So if you want to try to defend and try to create at least a few problems for white, you don't want to reach this position. You want to try to avoid it in some fashion. Whether it's trying to move your rook away earlier or whatever, it depends on the situation. So if you're black, you really just want to stay away from here because this is quite a basic win once you know the basic ideas. So I hope you found this instructive, and look for the next queen and rook videos. Thanks.